Hey everybody, welcome to the briefing room. Happy Thursday, I'm Devin Dwyer in Washington. A great show for you today. We're going to get out to the Minnesota State Fair, the great Minnesota get-together. Senator Amy Klobuchar is standing by, an interview with her coming up. But first, some breaking news out of the White House this hour. The administration now backing off deep cuts to foreign aid that had been a major sticking point in the budget battle. Also, something that had enraged diplomatic forces in this country. The foreign aid, of course, to so many countries seen as critical to stabilizing the global environment, promoting global health and human rights all around the world. Let's go right to the State Department. Our Connor Finnegan has been breaking this news. Connor, what do we know about this change in approach by the administration?
Well, Devin, President Trump has backed down off of this plan to cut up to $4 billion worth of foreign assistance. This was a list that was put together by the Office of Management and Budget, a wide variety of programs, including, as you mentioned, global health amid a deadly Ebola outbreak in the Democratic Republic of Congo. Programs for things like women's development, which is something that Ivanka Trump, the president's daughter, has really pushed, promoting religious freedom, which is something his vice president, Mike Pence, has also pushed, as well as countering Chinese influence and Russian influence, in particular in the Indo-Pacific region. We've learned today, according to 3 sources, that President Trump is now backing down from this plan after really intense opposition from Capitol Hill. The chairs of both the Senate Foreign Relations Committee, the House Foreign Affairs Committee, Republicans and Democrats, wrote a letter to the president weeks ago urging him not to undertake this cut because they said it would both be a violation of Congress's intent here, and it would be really an abdication of U.S. leadership on the world stage.
Yes, so much foreign aid goes out to much-needed places and causes, Connor. It's also been a target of President Trump from the beginning, even though it's a minuscule portion of the federal budget. Jordan Phelps is over at the White House. She's been talking to administration officials about this. Jordan, what are they saying about why the president took this extraordinary step of backing off a demand to cut the aid?
Devin, this was ultimately a case of who won out in the administration. We know that Mick Mulvaney, his acting chief of staff, and Russ Vought over at the Office of Management and Budget wanted the president to make these cuts. Both of those men are fiscal hawks and like to see a trimmer, leaner federal government. But ultimately, Secretary of State Mike Pompeo and Treasury Secretary, yes.
And thanks very much, Jordan. I'm so sorry we have to interrupt you because we do have to go out now to the Minnesota State Fair. I'm sorry we're about to lose our special guest, Amy Klobuchar, the senator of the great state of Minnesota. Senator, great to see you. Thanks so much for taking the time to talk to us. Great to have you in the briefing room. What's the best thing you've eaten so far? I see some food behind you. What have you eaten?
Cheese curds. Cheese curds are always the best. We're out here. It's a beautiful day. We've got tons of people out here, and Minnesota loves our big get-together. It's the biggest state fair in the country, except Texas, but they're open for 30 days.
I'm partial. I used to work at the Minnesota State Fair, so I know it is the best. But I want to start by asking your reaction to this news out of the White House on foreign aid. I know you've been an advocate for it. What do you make of this decision on their part to back off of cuts to it in the budget?
Well, I think there was so much pressure because it's General Mattis who once said that what he doesn't get in foreign aid, he has to use the money for bullets, basically, and that you want to be able to support countries that end up being your trading partners, that you end up buying your goods. I mean, I saw it in Africa, where countries where we have had good relations with, they buy American things, and we want to keep that up. We don't want to let China be in front of us, and they're starting to go all over the world. And so that is part of the argument on foreign aid. The other is it's a security issue for our country. I once stood with one of our Republican congressmen, Tom Emmer, to oppose the Trump administration's attempt to cut foreign aid when it came to countries like Somalia, because we know that if we don't at least get some semblance of order in those countries, that we saw al-Shabaab make threats against our own country. So a lot of it has to do with that.
You've talked a lot about your Minnesota roots as being a key component to your electability in this presidential campaign. You're the only Minnesotan running, of course. Are you the most electable Democrat out there? And what do you make of Jill Biden's comments this week that her husband's the most electable and everyone needs to, in her words, swallow it, even if they prefer someone better?
I'm going to let all the campaigns speak for themselves. I'll just talk for myself. I have a vision for this country, which is to bring people together. I said it that day when I announced in the middle of a snowstorm in the middle of the Mississippi River that we need to bridge the rivers of our divides to a higher place in our politics. I believe it even more today. When you have a president trying to divide people, when things go off, when we're concerned about the economy, what does he do? He whines. I can tell you people in the Midwest don't want a whiner in the White House, even if they voted for him. And my strengths are this. I tell the truth. I win in Republican districts. I've won in every single Republican district in Minnesota time and time again, every place, every race, every time. And I'm able to get things done. I passed over 100 bills since I've been in the United States Senate. And what people want is they want an optimistic economic agenda for this country. That's what I'm giving them. And that's why we made the debates in the fall, both of them. And we're looking forward to the debate on ABC. And it's why I'm going to win. I just really believe this strongly, that when people hear my message, I'm a great one to lead our ticket.
Let me ask you about your victory in Minnesota, 60% of the vote in 2018. It is no small feat, but Donald Trump, of course, you know well, Senator, in 2016 came very close in Minnesota to besting Hillary Clinton there. He's talking about winning in Minnesota. He's just tweeted last week that he's going to win in Minnesota.
He's tweeting all the time.
And he's talking about your congresswoman. Do you think this strategy of demonizing Ilhan Omar is going to be effective?
No, I can tell you this. I won 42 of the counties that he won. And when it comes to his tweets, last weekend I bested him with a simple tweet that said, what's the difference between Donald Trump and Greenland? Greenland is not for sale. People are tired of this. They want someone that's optimistic in the White House, and I'm ready to go. And I tell people around here, it's like I've met the playoffs. I'm in those debates. We're excited about that ABC debate. And, you know, the wild card team has won the Super Bowl 6 times. And we're ready to win it.
You're in it to win it, just like the Minnesota Twins this year, of course. You know, we've been talking to a lot of fairgoers there about your candidacy. I actually have a question for you from Bob and Kelly from your home state, and I'm going to play it for you right now. This is Bob and Kelly. Here it is.
Is there any way to rein in presidential powers?
All right, and I feel like Congress already has that power, and I want to know why Congress isn't doing it.
And if you couldn't hear that, is there any way to rein in presidential powers? They feel like Congress already has the power and they're not doing anything. What do you say to Bob and Kelly?
I can feel their pain here because it's frustrating to me. The way you rein in President Trump is by following the law, by having a Senate that follows the law. And right now, Mitch McConnell is not reining in his power. And in fact, there's really pragmatic legislation like for gun safety. The majority of Trump voters want to see sensible background checks, but Mitch McConnell won't let it come up for a vote. So you rein in bad things by, one, winning elections and getting Donald Trump out of the White House, but two, for right now, the public just has to keep pushing. They want to see the gun safety legislation passes, they want to see backup paper ballots, and they're tired of all this gridlock and want to get things done. That's why I'm running, and I got to get over to our booth by the haunted house and the pork chop on a stick and the snake zoo. Can't get a better location than that.
Senator Amy Klobuchar of the great state of Minnesota, thanks so much for coming on. Great to see you, Senator. Appreciate your time very much. Great to see everybody out there on the campaign trail in my home state. A lot of the candidates stopping by the Minnesota State Fair in St. Paul before or after their trip this weekend to California for the DNC summer meeting of delegates. We'll see a lot of them out there and check in out there tomorrow. We should put in a plug now. As the senator mentioned, the ABC News debates are just around the corner. 1 week from today, we'll have the cutoff for who will make those debates. Already 10 candidates out of the Democratic field have qualified for the debate, including Senator Klobuchar. We'll have results next week, 1 week from today on the 29th. You can also catch the entire ABC News debate here from Houston, Texas, September 12th. And ABC News has just announced the 4 moderators for the debate: George Stephanopoulos, our chief anchor of World News Tonight, David Muir, our ABC News correspondent, Lindsay Davis, and Univision anchor Jorge Ramos will all be moderating that debate in Texas. Turning now to the economy and the recession fears that have gripped discussion on Wall Street for the past week as stocks have gone on a roller coaster, even spooking the president for the past few days, talking about possibly taking some emergency measures. But all of us are asking here, what are the odds that a recession is actually going to happen? Are economists spot on in their predictions that one could be right around the corner? Well, our friends at 538 have been taking a look at that. I'm joined now by Amelia Thomas DeVoe, who has a great piece up right now on 538 looking at that very question. It turns out, Amelia, economists don't always have the best prediction skills on this one.
That's right. Yeah. Economists are generally not good at predicting exactly when a recession will occur, when a recession will strike. And we see this in studies. There was one study that looked at recessions from all over the world over a several decade period, and economists predicted really very, very few of them. And part of the trouble is that it's just really hard to predict with any certainty what's going to be happening in the economy. You know, as far out, people are talking about what would happen if there's a recession during the 2020 race, what happens if a recession comes the year after that. And the fact is that it's just very difficult to say with any certainty when a recession will be coming. You can say, you know, there are clues and signs that an economic downturn may be impending, but economists just don't have the tools to say, you know, we know a recession is going to come in 2020 or in 2021.
And so, you know, it's interesting because we know that recessions happen. One almost certainly, as you wrote in your piece, will happen again sometime. So really the question is one of timing. You talk about indicators, Amelia. I want to ask you about this one that's getting a lot of play on social, the inverted yield curve, this funky chart that basically is a warning sign to some investors that perhaps one is near. Tell us about that. Does that actually give us any firmer a sense that one could be at least coming in the near future?
Well, some economists have certainly pointed out that it's been a reliable indicator of a coming economic downturn. And that's because it's basically a reflection of how investors are feeling about the future of the economy. So it's not that an inverted yield curve causes a recession to come, but it's sort of a way of seeing how folks are feeling about whether they think the economy is going to continue to be strong. And those are people who are, you know, investors following the market, have a lot at stake here. And it has been quite accurate as a predictor of economic downturns. But the trouble is, you look at the lead time between when the yield curve inverts and when a recession actually comes, and it's anywhere between 6 months, which, you know, is quite soon, and almost 2 years. So it's a really, really wide span. And that's the difference between, you know, a recession coming right in the middle of the presidential race and one coming well after the next president comes into office.
Yeah, huge political stakes in that window, which is, as you say, pretty wide. So I think we all need to take a breath. This is a good reality check in your piece, Amelia. I want to bring Jordan Phelps back into this over at the White House because it does seem, to Amelia's point, Jordan, that this is sort of pseudoscience. Nobody really knows. In fact, the president keeps insisting that one is not happening now, a recession is not happening, it's not imminent, and yet aides are sort of sending these mixed messages where they're sort of scrambling to talk about emergency measures for an emergency they claim isn't actually happening.
Yeah, Devin, on one hand, the president doesn't want to let on that there could be a recession coming. But on the other, he has been sending these signals that he, too, and the administration is concerned. Just to give you this week as an example, it's really been head spinning when it comes to tax cuts. They first told us that payroll tax cuts were not on the table, that was not under consideration. And then just hours later, the president himself told us he actually was thinking about it. But then just 24 hours later, the president said, never mind, not thinking about that after all because the economy is so strong. But Devin, you'll recall it was just last week that the president had a rally in New Hampshire, and there he put the economy front and center in that rally, telling people that whether they love him or they hate him, they have to vote for him because otherwise, he warned, their 401ks will go down the tubes. So the president very much trying to have it both ways here, arguing that he is the only president who can kind of bring the economy to new heights. But at the same time, there are some real worrying signs in the economy right now, whether or not the president wants to acknowledge that publicly.
And so many of the signs, Amelia, are sort of consumer sentiment related, investor sentiment related. They're not actually sort of, concrete, meaningful indicators of actual economic growth, for example. But we did get some new numbers today from the Bloomberg Consumer Comfort Index, which is down to a 7-month low, suggesting consumers are at least starting to absorb some of this anxiety about the economy. You also took a look at whether or not some of these headlines and all this talk could be self-fulfilling. What's your sense on that? I mean, could we talk ourselves into a recession?
Well, that's something that I asked the economists that I spoke to for my piece. Is discussion of a recession something that could actually lead to one happening? And what they said is, it's possible. It's possible that if people respond to these headlines by, for example, saving their money and not going on vacation in the next few weeks of the summer, or, not spending in other ways, or businesses respond by saying, we're going to hold off on hiring for now or expanding and just wait to see what happens, that could be something that sort of further slows down the economy and actually kind of reinforces the issue that everyone's pointing to. On the other hand, it's possible that discussion of these sort of worrisome signs could be an opportunity for some kind of intervention that could sort of change the odds of a recession coming. And I think that's one of the difficulties in taking these signals and saying, we know that a recession is going to come next year, or it's going to come in 2 years, because so much of this, as you noted, is sort of based on how people feel about the economy, and so much can change.
Great reporting at 538.com from Amelia Thomas DeVoe. Thank you so much, Amelia, for coming on. Our thanks to Jordan Phelps at the White House as well. You can check out that article on our website about how bad economists traditionally have been in predicting the timing of a recession, though perhaps one could come generally soon. Our thanks to that. Turning now to a disturbing story about the climate. You may have heard that the Amazon rainforest is facing an extraordinary season of fires down in Brazil. This one direct threat to what scientists call the planet's lungs. The Amazon rainforest, which sucks tons of carbon out of the atmosphere, is now at risk, with so much of the forest rapidly deteriorating, not regrowing in that area. Could accelerate climate change. For more on what this means and for what policymakers can and should do about it, I'm joined now by National Geographic explorer Andrew Russo. He joins us from Miami. He spent a lot of time down in the Amazon. Andrew, thanks so much for coming in. Give us your bottom line on what we are seeing down there in these extraordinary images and why people should care about this.
Yeah, so my name is Andres Russo, and I'm a National Geographic explorer and conservationist. I've been working in the Amazon for almost 10 years now. And, this really is an exceptional part of the globe. This is one of the most biodiverse spots on the planet. This is not only cleans our air, but provides water itself. And also in a future with a lot of uncertainty relating to superbugs, to climate change, to all sorts of issues, the Amazon itself really presents a sort of genetic bank, a botanical bank to a lot of our potential salvation to a lot of the worst problems. So having this burned down, I mean, it's a serious, serious issue.
This has been going on for some time, Andres, as well, all right? I mean, not only has there been deforestation for farming and other reasons, but these fires, as you say. Is there anything that can be done or is being done to regrow the forest in these areas? Or is this something like once it's destroyed, it's done?
So, okay, you asked a couple of good questions there. So the first one is, has it been going on for a long time? Yes. The Amazon basin is about 90% the size of the United States. About 70% the size of the United States equivalent, right, would be covered in forest. Like I said, this is one of the most biodiverse places on Earth. And we have been losing about 2 soccer fields roughly every single minute to deforestation. And that is a major, major issue. As far as what we're seeing now, that's even worse, because suddenly you have, I work a lot with colleagues in Brazil. I'm Peruvian. I work in most of my work is in Peru. But, one of the things that my Brazilian colleagues are constantly saying is, we have an administration in Brazil that is very much, oh no, this forest is here to destroy. This forest is here to develop. We need to make money off of this. And if it's, if there's a tree that's worth money, let's cut it down. If there's land that we can clear for cattle, let's cut it down. That's the problem. That's getting out of control. And one of the issues with that is that, well, look, the rainforest produces its own weather systems, really. So when you have mass burnings like this, and unfortunately, this is something not too many people I haven't seen too much in news sources, it creates its own rain. So when you start getting large swaths of this damaged, that impacts the entire forest forever. Look, I'm the head of a nonprofit that's supported by National Geographic, the Boiling River Project. You can check out our stuff on boilingriver.org, for example. And among other things, we're one of many groups doing work to conserve, to protect, to reforest parts of the Amazon. But let me put it this way. If you've got a massive tree that could take 300 years to grow, and that gets chopped down, burned down, you're not losing that tree, you're losing the entire ecosystem around it, the microbes in those soils that are helping give life to this area. So you might reforest. I mean, even in the best case, if I was able to reforest a huge swath of Amazon now, it might be 300 years or more until that's back to normal. So we're losing a treasure right now, and that's a serious issue for everybody.
Yeah, it sure is. And I know that ABC News and other organizations are trying to put a spotlight on this, National Geographic as well. I have one more question for you, Andres, but I also want to show our viewers some new pictures we're just getting in, high-res satellite photos from Maxar satellite images. This is just a snapshot, really. You're looking here. Obviously, you can see the plumes of smoke from where some of these fires are burning. But if you look on the right-hand side of your screen, you can see all the cleared or farmed, burned land in this section of the upper Amazon River Basin. On the left-hand side, you see obviously the dark green portions of preserved forest that has slowly been dwindling away in just a snapshot right here from satellite. But Andres, what can be done from the U.S. perspective? We asked the Pentagon and the State Department today here in Washington whether the Trump administration had reached out in any way to help the Brazilian government fight these fires and support the Amazon. We didn't get an answer back, but is there something from your point of view as a conservationist that the U.S. government should be doing?
So I definitely, there's more that the U.S. government could be doing. That's definitely putting pressure. Speaking of trees, that's a big branch that just fell behind me. Sorry about that. Making sure that doesn't land on me. Yes, as governments at this point should be our first line of defense as far as what the future is going to hold. Pressure, funding, aid, all of that stuff helps, and it does. But the problem is if you don't have a political system, in this case in Brazil, willing to receive that or willing to deny science, to gag order Brazilian scientists that are at the forefront of this, I think that's a bigger problem. And that's where you, me, all of the consumers watching this, honestly, also have a big role to play. We can do a lot. 4 things in particular. Number one, there's all sorts of great organizations. I mentioned mine. We've mentioned things at National Geographic. There's a lot of other ones. You can donate to groups like ours that are helping out, number one. In my opinion, my personal favorite, come visit the Amazon. And I'm not kidding about that. Look, one large tree, depending on species and type, you can sell for between $5,000 to $10,000 on the illegal markets. That's an issue. How do we make a tree worth more? Standing up and laying down? Ecotourism is one of our best bets. Come experience the Amazon. Come live it. It's one of the most biodiverse places on Earth. It's a celebration of life. And everywhere you look, something's buzzing, slithering, doing something. And you leave the jungle and you think the rest of the world is sterile, man. Like, experiencing it and living it is a way you can help. Planting trees, even here in the United States, the U.S. was once covered in forest too. And that's, unfortunately, the argument that the Brazilian administration is using against the United States right now. They are actively saying, okay, Europeans, okay, Americans, you guys got to deforest all of your stuff. It's our turn to do the same. I'm summarizing what they're saying, but that's effectively it. Where you have different states across the globe that are telling high schoolers, you can't graduate until you plant a tree. That's not a bad idea. Reforest the United States. And then also, as far as the last thing that you can do as a consumer, what are you buying? Where is it coming from? A lot of the deforestation in South America, in the Amazon basin, is a direct result of cattle farming. If you are minimizing your red meat intake or avoiding it altogether, or if you're making sure that your whatever products that you buy that have palm oil in them are sourced sustainably, in areas that do not damage the rainforest. That is a big thing, big thing. But again, I think the best thing we can do as individuals, frankly, go visit the jungle. It's not a scary place. It's not a place of terror. It's a place of wonder, of fascination. And if you go there, I swear to you, you will fall in love with it. And they will make these things hurt all the more.
You pretty good sell on that, Andres Russo, National Geographic Explorer. I think we might need to tag along down there on a trip to the Amazon to save the Amazon by our travel. It's a great point. Tourism, charity, you mentioned, planting a tree here at home, and of course, exercising some consumer power on looking at where those goods are coming from here at home. Thank you so much. Great pointers as all of us watch those horrific images from the Amazon rainforest, which is burning at an extraordinary rate right now. Finally, today, some good news out of the Smithsonian National Zoo, just a few miles from here. There was a birthday today that we're celebrating. The Smithsonian's national panda, Bei, is celebrating 4 years old today. A giant panda cub, a gift from China, on loan from China, celebrated by former First Lady Michelle Obama when Bei first arrived here. Now 4 and apparently enjoying some bamboo. And a little bit of maybe birthday cake there? I don't know. It's always fun to look at those furry creatures. Great to have you with us here in the briefing room on this Thursday. We hope you'll join us tomorrow, every day, 3:30 Eastern Time, here on ABC News Live. I'm Devin Dwyer in Washington. We'll see you next time.